Well, good morning, everybody. I'm not sure if you get a chance to watch my colleague Matt Reardon's forecast videos. He puts them out once a week, primarily focusing on weather in the West. But one of the fun things we were discussing yesterday is we've talked a lot about the pressure patterns north of Hawaii, right? We've said that that's been the main setup for what's been going on across the United States. And it's been interesting to watch the water vapor imagery there, because just take a look at this stream of tropical moisture that's been running here and diving into the northwest United States. What's really important about this is just the fact that it is loading the mid and upper levels of the atmosphere with moisture as flow is coming into the west. And the reason why I stress this is because we should be moving into a time of year where we're looking at these darker shades of colors representing dry mid and upper level air kind of moving into the west. That's often what sets up the whole overall pattern for early summer. And as it stands, we've had quite a bit of moisture just pouring in this very interesting trajectory from the tropics. And it's just a part of the system that we've been discussing here for a while, and we've been questioning its persistence. So here's the plan for today. We're going to walk through some of the major weather threats here in the near term, including flooding risk, significant flooding risk in eastern Texas across the Gulf Coast. We're going to transition back into our kind of 7 to 10 day outlook just to see if there's been any shift in the weather pattern, across the country. And then we're going to look out there a bit at some of the long-range information. But what I'm preparing for you tomorrow is a look at a 5-model approach to forecasting summer. So we're going to stitch that all together, got all the new data in, and we're going to go after that. By the way, before you finish this one, I got some interesting information on Russia I just think we should talk about. But speaking of this moisture coming through, let me take you back and just show you what it looks like yesterday. Can you see it here? This is the upper level cloud, now looking at a true color image, kind of pouring in. So a lot of this began live. So if you're here in the Northwest and you saw that upper level cloud, this started north of Hawaii about a day ago, so just to show you that flow. A couple of other things just to keep note of here. Bigger storm complexes that came out around our first low down here in parts of the Carolinas, again, erasing some of the drought concerns I had, over the last 40 to 60 days. Take a look, here at the Gulf of Mexico. You can see the wildfire smoke from the wildfires in Mexico spreading in this area. We can also see we finally got some cloud cover and rain down into the southern part of Florida, which has been extremely hot and humid. It normally is, but it's been even hotter and more humid than average. And so this kind of broke some of that heat. And one of the top things to be watching will be the remnants of the convection yesterday right here in the southern plains. What this is going to do in the outflow from these storms yesterday is going to set up a boundary that's going to move toward eastern Texas and roll along the Gulf Coast, where it is going to increase the severe weather threat and the threat for flooding. So just here in the last 72 hours, take note, we've already had across parts of the kind of Gulf Coast area and through here, places picking up 4 to 6 inches of rainfall. I've made an adjustments to all of my color bars and all of my mapping. I can't wait to release this all to you at the end of the month. But you can see very, very wet here as of late. And any rain in this part of Texas is adding to what's already been an exceptionally wet spring. I showed you that earlier this week, that we have parts of eastern Texas that have already through the front half of May seen an entire year's worth of total precipitation. The low that moved through the Midwest just continued to slow down any sense of planting progress here. And we just continue to see the atmosphere and its ability to make quite a bit of rain across big geographies in the country here in the near term. All right, so here's where this story is unfolding. The National Weather National Weather Service has already issued a large area of flood watches today, as we're going to watch what's left of those storms reorganize later today and potentially produce what could be a linear event in terms of storm structure that rolls across this area with the ability to produce a lot of rainfall. Just to remind you of how much we've had, we're going to look at 2 different time periods here. This is our last 14 days of total accumulated precipitation. And again, on the new adjusted color bar, it's becoming clearer how many areas have had, between 3 times and up to 10 times their normal precipitation. Extremely wet in the southeast, moisture finally returning to those drier areas of Virginia, North Carolina. But you come back here to this part of Texas, and again, we're 8 to 10 times normal rainfall just in the last 2 weeks. There have been a few areas that have missed. You can see the drier pockets here at the southwest. Of course, this is not uncommon to be dry down here this time of year. Big section here of central Washington, though, showing up drier too. And outside of that large complex of storms that rolled through earlier this week in Idaho, the Snake River Valley had been drier. But looking back over the last 30 days, the thing that really just jumps out to me here is how this dry air has been continued to work its way into this region. Despite some local rains that have come in, it's still showing up there in the 30-day maps. Western Texas, New Mexico, sneaking into central Kansas, as we've talked a lot about. And then you can see the extremely wet conditions that have been here. So now you see why I was saying that rain coming through Florida was key, because for much of the last 30 days, this area had been dry and it had been hot. So just another perspective on this. I'm looking forward to seeing the new drought monitor today to see how much more drought area has been eaten away as we get some of the new data in and try to assess this. But just looking in the near term, got a pretty large area in Texas getting to Louisiana that's under a slight and enhanced risk for severe storms. But remember, we could hear some thunder here as this system rolls through the Midwest as well. Tomorrow, it's going to move over Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama. Weak front sneaks through the northern tier of the United States, giving the risk of some storms. And then as we get out there beyond that, it's just going to be the evolution of the pattern dropping more troughs in the west that set us up for severe weather. All right, so here comes some of the model data. Starting at 7 a.m. this morning, watch the complex of storms here this afternoon likely turn into a large linear event. Notice this is not the right type of wind shear setup to give us individual supercell thunderstorms, lots of them. I don't see that. There could be some stuff out ahead of this, but what I'm watching most carefully for is the squall line event coming through this area. So this is 5 o'clock tonight Central Time, and that's going to push through eastern Texas, getting into Louisiana and Mississippi in the overnight hours. Meanwhile, we do have a little shortwave sinking through Missouri. That's by midday going to be putting some rain across the southern half of Illinois after coming out of Missouri. The northern parts of Illinois and Iowa are going to get a bit of a break, and I want you to watch this area carefully if you're a farmer here to see how long the window might stay open until it closes up again. So as we play forward through the rest of the day Thursday, getting into Friday morning, again, we're watching this frontal boundary sneak through the northern tier of the U.S. There it is. See it? And that's what's going to initiate the risk of those strong storms on Friday night as one low pushes over parts of the Appalachian Mountains toward the east. But it does appear that we're going to try to open up a bit of a window here to get things dry down and maybe get us through Friday into Saturday and Sunday with a bit of a break. We do know that more rain's coming after this, but if I add all this up, according to the high-res NAM, what I'm seeing here is a lot of scattered precipitation in this area. It's wetter to the south of that line, which kind of runs along like I-70 kind of in this area. So we're going to look for an opening here just to dry things down and to maybe get some planting in this weekend. But to the south, you can see here, this is using my old color bar. We're going to switch this over soon, that we've got a good shot at getting another 4, 5, 6 inches of rain right in through this corridor and causing a substantial amount of flooding on top of the severe weather threat. Okay, is the pattern shifting at all? That's our question. So let's play the European AIFS. I'll be honest with you, until I see this miss, I'm going to stick with it. I'll do the comparison between the other models in the background, but I want to let you know there's a reason why I'm using the artificial intelligence. I think it's picking up on the subtle features better. Like, for example, this trough that's off the west coast, that on Sunday, as the next trough reloads in the northwest, this gets pulled in. Watch this thing. It's like a slingshot. Here it is. See, getting grabbed by that broader trough and just whipped right here through the Midwest. So this is going to close the planting windows here early next week, like Monday night into Tuesday and Wednesday, out ahead of this trough as this comes in. Heavy rains through parts of the Canadian Prairie, cold in parts of the Canadian Prairie, and our ridge, it just keeps trying to get to the west, but it's not there. So what happens is by next Wednesday and Thursday, the reinforcing trough digs in on the backside. There's another one coming in here as this ridge pushes up. And what we end up getting out of this is just more flow coming in like this. So where are we in the forecast? This is out day 11, so we're out there on May 26th. And I just want to continue to see if that feature stays in place. Remember, this is the same one that gave you that kind of tendril of moisture we looked at. It still seems to be there by the end of the month, and we have, generally speaking, flow coming across the United States, Canadian Prairie, like this. The only thing that could make this worse for rainfall and just nonstop rainfall would be a large ridge of high pressure here. And I know we often compare to 2019 in this situation for some folks. I did a comparison earlier this week, and you know that about the only state that's wetter than 19 is Iowa, and this part of Texas, which is just smashing records. But in 19, excuse me, I also want to mention 1993. By the time we got into June, we saw a ridge of high pressure live over the southeast and another one live over the northwest. And what's important about that is that right in the middle, you see how the flow comes in like this and then goes like this. And that's what set up a boundary right here. So I'm not saying 1993 is going to go on repeat, but with all of the flooding we've had this spring and the wet weather and planting delays, we are curious if we get into a June time period like we did in 93 with these competing ridges. No indication now, I'm just making a point here, that's all. So please don't read anything into that more than that statement. The big statement is we finished the month with southwest flow. And that's going to be the type of flow that keeps things on the wetter side of things. So let's go through our 5 models. This is the artificial intelligence forecasting system looking out over the next 7 days. And again, I can't wait to show this all to you. Like, you'll be able to come in here and look at these regions. Like, let's look at the South Central region. Take note, we've got 1.5 to 2.5, 3 inches of rain down here. If you want to look at the North Central, so we just come in, we can make changes and see what these models. You'll have this for all the models, not just the AIFS. Looking at the heavier rains here. You can switch to the southeast, the northwest, the southwest, whatever we want. We're all going to have it. I'm excited to deliver that. But let's go back to the U.S. view, and then let's show it to you with comparison to the national blend of models. Again, you'll have the same capabilities with this, and just looking here at the wet weather over the next 7 days as it continues. This would be the forecast from the WPC. And model number 4 would be the European. And model 5 is going to be the GFS. Canadian prairie rain, repeated chances of storms, tight windows in the Midwest, flooding across the South. That's kind of the story that we've got here. If we keep dipping troughs into the west, we keep it more chances of going over cooler, especially in the Pacific Northwest. All right, I wanted to again show you the model comparison. We made a big deal about this yesterday. The GFS is still the wetter model here, where the European's wetter to the south, so that hasn't changed much. It's a bit of a mix down here in the south and mid-south as to what to expect, but I always like to compare these models to see where their trajectory on each of the lows and the lingering frontal boundaries lay so we can see where the heaviest precip is. All right, I think I'm going to make an adjustment to this map, and you can leave in the comments if you think it's better. I've made this statement that once we get into summer, these lower resolution but longer time scale models like the GFS and the European, they don't capture convection well. So you see they look kind of blotchy and it's hard to pick out individual features. What I'm thinking about doing to complement this is to build a map that just shows you, it'll have 10 slides in it, and it'll just be daily totals from the models. So we just kind of watch the day-by-day setup as it goes forward. I don't know. We'll build that, and if you like it, you can let me know. If you don't, we won't show it often. All right, so here we are. This is tonight. There's that heavy rain. That's what I'm going to be watching carefully. Front sneaks through the Midwest. Now what I'm going to watch, I'm going to keep an eye on the European. This is as the rain starts to clear into Indiana, which has lately had some incredibly heavy rainfall as well. When does the window open here, and how long? So this is tomorrow morning, on Friday morning. We're playing through Saturday. That's when the front sneaks through here, giving us the risk of severe storms watch right there on Saturday night. And as we play this forward, it seems like Sunday into Monday, right there is when the European model Sunday night tries to bring a front into Minnesota, Iowa, parts of Nebraska. That'll close the window. So I guess that would be late today through Sunday night that we could get an opening here to dry things down enough that maybe some folks will be able to work some ground. We then go forward. Monday, that front comes into Illinois, into Tuesday, and clears into the Ohio River Valley, snakes all the way down here to the lower Mississippi River Valley. We have kind of persistent moisture coming across the Canadian prairie. Our next low is in the northwest, and then we see the Midwest by Wednesday into Thursday and Friday. Well, we have a lingering front that's right in there that might increase some rain for some folks. And then by the time we get to the end of the week and the weekend, we have another system rolling into that area. So that means over the next 10 days, next 7 days, the chance of grabbing an inch in this pattern is shown here. So this is a lot of Midwest area in that 50 to 90% range of getting another inch. And as we stretch this out to 10 days, which will likely take us to the end of the month with this wet pattern, this is what we've got. So windows are tight. They've really tightened up as of late, and we don't see much relief in that going forward. If you go back to Tuesday's video, you can see my GDD analysis if we don't plant until the end of the month or even the beginning of June. And I hope that just helps with kind of seeing how the weather historically would behave if we can't get a crop until then. All right, from there, I do want to point out that the CPC is still looking at, excuse me, the 23rd through the 25th of having a risk of heavy precipitation in this area. They've kind of shifted it a bit farther to the north, as you can see here, but this is the week 2 forecast. There's that same region they've identified. The European, which really failed us 2 Mondays ago, is kind of back in agreement with the other models here, except for in the southeast. But do you remember this from last year? The GFS has a almost persistent bias toward too dry in the southeast once we get into summer thunderstorm action. And that's an area where the European tends to shine. So we'll watch that evolution of the models as well. Okay, talking about temperatures next. Frost threat over the next 7 days. This is now getting to what we expect, so it's just at elevation in the west. But we do have quite a bit of heat that's going to come across the southern tier of the U.S. Cool in the northwest, so that's why the numbers have backed off. But again, these are GDD's forecast for the next 7 days. Max temperatures look something like this. Here's today's highs. Getting into Friday, see that trough coming in the northwest? That's some cooler weather here. This is all cloud cover driven down here for Friday. We then get into Saturday. Some warmer air starts to sweep in the middle part of the country. We're triple digit all week long down here in southern Texas. This is Sunday. That warmth that had been in California starts to fade by this weekend. There's Monday into Tuesday as the broader troughs start to come in, knocking these temperatures back to be, in terms of Fahrenheit, 3 to 8 degrees cooler than average across a broad area here. Quite warm. Our place that's hottest is going to be this part of Texas. This is Wednesday of next week. All right, from there, this is the day 5 through 10 outlook from the GFS ensemble, really showing you that pattern, right? There's our troughs. Flow's going to come around the southern side of that, and that's what's keeping things wet. Day 10 through 15, cooler air slides in through here, but it's just cooler. It's not cold. Don't have any frost out at this point. But take a look at what the Europeans got, day 5 through 10. It's got temperatures, now this is in Celsius, but it's got temperatures here in the Canadian Prairie that are like 5 to 7 degrees Celsius cooler than average. So that's cold with all that rain that just came through. And then we can stretch this out, and it's got a pretty similar look right now to what the GFS did. Now, that gets you out to the very end of May, and we have questions about how it's going to transition into June. And keeping on this idea of temperatures, I want to just go week by week with the European weeklies, and let's just take note of what they've got. Because as you watch this is a sliding 1 week window, so you've already seen this, right? Watch what happens after we get into week 3. That's week 3 right there. And what I'm concerned about is that I have made a case that we got to watch the ocean temperatures in the North Pacific and the risk of summer ridging developing here. But we're now into June. And what I noticed in the newest European model forecast is that sliding through June, heat is expected to build. We've made a case that we expect a hot and stormy summer for the Corn Belt. We've made a case that we expect maybe this whole corridor to stay hot and stormy with flow coming out of the northwest. To make that happen, there's got to be a big southwest ridge. And I don't want a southwest ridge down here for a lot of reasons. For example, the slowing of the monsoon, the impacts that this will have on the highly productive agriculture of this area. But it's a case that I can't ignore, and the models are now starting to show that heat coming into this region. So what are they showing for precipitation? Let's just look at a 30-day anomaly. We've watched this corridor stay open for wetter conditions going into June. Drier down in Texas, no one would complain down here. But what we don't want to see is after such extremely wet conditions, a complete flip in the pattern that drives this whole region into drought and then shuts down the southwest monsoon. We've presented a few different cases for that to happen, and I just want to let you know that we've got to watch it carefully, and we'll just keep you updated on the trends. From here, I want to go talk quickly about some international weather. This is the latest 10-day forecast from the European looking at precipitation anomalies. And there's been a few areas we focused a lot on, like what's going on in the Russian wheat belt or what's going down here in southern Brazil, how wet it's been throughout Indonesia and pockets of Southeast Asia, the flooding south of the Yangtze River. As I look at this, I want to also let you know that very soon you won't just have the European 10-day. You'll have all of the forecast models I process, including the artificial intelligence. And this is its 10-day forecast for precipitation anomalies. Slightly different projection. This will be what my new projections look like. But take a look at how much drier it is. There's the Black Sea is here. So that southern Russian wheat belt is there. And the artificial intelligence forecast is drier than the dynamical model. And I got to watch that carefully right in that area. And some of the reasons for that is because if we look at where wheat is produced across Russia, you've probably heard some news about the Russian wheat belt, which is primarily here, butting up against Ukraine, and sneaking just here to the, kind of between the Caspian Sea and the Black Sea. If we kind of zoom in and get a closer look of it, it's kind of this region right into here that grows the most wheat. By the way, they grow corn and soybeans after this in this area. And, this winter wheat production area has had a rough finish. And if you take a look at some of the NDVI data for that same spot, it's below its historical average. Last year it was well above. So we're trying to question the stress in this particular area right now. Now, I understand they, of course, grow other crops in this region. I'm just looking at a wheat growing area as an example, heavily produced region for global grains right in through here. And we're just looking at some stresses. The last area I'm going to finish up with is going to be South America, because the European model went back to where it was, which is just suggesting that out there about day 5 through 10, they're expecting just incredibly heavy rains to hit the flooded regions that have been hit hard for the last 35, 40 days in southern Brazil. This would primarily be Rio Grande do Sul. So that is going to be key. Take note, though, the new model runs are trying to put in better rains into Paraná, Mato Grosso do Sul, and Mato Grosso. So this would be very, very late but beneficial rains on a crop that's going through grain fill heading toward harvest. Something to think about there. All right, that's what I want to share with you today. Tomorrow, multi-model analysis on the long range, and we'll kind of wrap up this week's discussion and get into the weekend. Really appreciate it. Have a good one. Thank you.